My name is Linda Weekman. My Indian name is Yayatsin. I'm an elder of the Lower Awa tribe. I've always been interested in our tribal culture and preserving our culture along with our treaty rights.
Hello, good evening. Can you all hear me okay? My name is Rick Eggers, and I'm with the Mount Baker group of Sierra Club. And thank you all for coming out tonight to see Unconquering the Last Frontier. The Mount Baker group Sierra Club, which is your host with the Lincoln Theater tonight, is the group of Sierra Club that encompasses Whatcom, Skagit, and San Juan counties. And on behalf of Sierra Club, I want to welcome you to this beautiful theater and this beautiful film. Let's all thank the Lincoln, its staff, and especially Program Director Carl Fresky. Tonight would not have been possible without the interest and cooperation of the Lincolns. Let's give them a hand. I also want to thank the amazing folks who will be part of the panel discussion following tonight's screening. I hope you can stay for that. And I'll turn this over to Linda Mapes in a moment. Author and journalist, ex-journalist, maybe continuing journalist, to say more about that. But first I'd like to speak a little bit about the film you're about to see. The man behind this documentary is Robert Lundahl, who unfortunately can't be here tonight, but he is listening in. And so I hope you can hear me thanking him for creating this remarkable art. Originally premiering in 2000 in Seattle, also then sponsored by Sierra Club, Unconquering the Last Frontier is quite unusual. It is told from the tribal perspective with the input and assistance of Lower Elwha Klallam tribal members, especially elders Beatrice Charles and Adeline Smith. Back then, it was far from predictable that a Southern California white man would collaborate with two tribal elders to produce a work of tribal history and culture. But Robert Lundahl is anything but predictable. And thank goodness for that. This movie, which he has fully restored and modernized for digital projection, is much more than a work of history. You may think you know the story behind the movie, because we all know the Lower Elwha dams were removed starting in 2011, well after this film premiered. That was a big, big deal. Yeah, whoop it up, go for it. That was then the largest dam removal known to man. Since then, the Klamath River dam removal has surpassed it as the largest. Whoop it up for that one, too. But the film goes far beyond setting up dam removal. It tells the story of the birth of the dams, the culture that built them, and what that culture destroyed. Through old film, photos, artifacts, and memory, as well as modern people and memory making, it tells the story of power, financial power, water power, electric power, colonial power. And in telling that story, it lays bare what happens if you're unlucky enough to be in the path of power, whether you be human or animal. That story is worth knowing and remembering, because there are still dams in Washington that hurt tribes, as well as salmon habitat and salmon migrations. For instance, the four lower Snake River dams, Columbia River dams, and right here in our own magnificent backyard, Seattle City Light's three 100-plus-year-old upper Skagit River dams are currently being reconsidered for relicensing for possibly 50 more years. In fact, I understand we may have several SCL representatives here tonight, and if they did make it, I welcome them. Ultimately, this film is an opportunity, a chance for all of us to learn, to understand, and to recognize that this story has been told before with other dams, other rivers, other watersheds, yet not so different from ours. Will we learn from what has come before? What lessons will you take home tonight? Thank you. And now, Linda Mapes.
Hi, everybody. Happy Indigenous Peoples Day. If you are an Indigenous person, would you please stand and receive our love and respect? Come on. Yes. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for taking care of these lands and waters for 10,000 years before we showed up. Thank you for putting up with us. Thank you for teaching us. May we go forward together. Tonight is an important night. We're going to talk about this film afterward. So don't skedaddle once the credits roll. Please come sit and talk with us. We want to hear your questions. We have an esteemed panel of Indigenous leaders with us this evening to talk about this film once it's over. I want to say a few things about this film before I introduce the panel. First of all, the title, Unconquering the Last Frontier. So this is, for those of you who didn't know this, a bit of a tongue-in-cheek title, because Thomas Aldwell, the developer, builder of the Elwha Dam, as well as the Glines Canyon Dam above it, wrote an autobiography called Conquering the Last Frontier. And if you haven't read it, you should. It kind of tells you a lot about how we got to be just where we are. And I think one of the things I'm so thrilled about with this film, it was so forward-looking. It was made quite some time ago, and yet I think you'll see how it not only stands the test of time, but points forward to the future. What was done on the Elwha River at the time that it was beginning to be talked about by elders at the Lower Elwha Clallam tribe who got it all started was regarded as crazy, something that could never happen, quote unquote. I heard it a lot. And if it did happen, that it could never work. Well, here we are. What is so beautiful about this recovery is that it is happening faster than scientists had even dared hope. We are now far beyond a fish recovery and headed to fisheries by Lower Elwha Clallam tribal members, who I do believe were probably out there fishing on the river today, on Indigenous Peoples Day. And furthermore, the animals are fishing. I have taken great joy in seeing wildlife camera footage of cougars snacking on coho from the Elwha. So this is something to truly celebrate. Washington State has busted more big dams than any other in the United States. Dam removal is probably the signature environmental movement of our time. It will not be the answer everywhere, but where it makes sense, you can't beat it. Take out the concrete, life comes back. So with that, I would like to introduce our panelists. If you would please come up on stage for just a moment so people can see you and appreciate you. I'll call your names. Linda Weichman, please come forward. Linda is an artist and a citizen of the Lower Elwha Clallam tribe. I've known Linda for probably 25 years. We met together when there was a very big and very controversial dig up going on the Elwha waterfront after the discovery of a large tribal village right there on the waterfront. And Linda and I met as the bones and belongings of the elders of her tribe were being taken out of those grave sites. Next up, J.J. Wilbur, please come forward. J.J. Wilbur is an office holder for the Swinomish Tribal Indian community. He's the treasurer of the Swinomish Tribal Senate. J.J., please come forward and let us appreciate you. And finally, Scott Schuyler. Please come forward. Scott Schuyler is a descendant of a treaty signer. He's an elder for the Upper Skagit tribe, and he's also a policy representative for his tribe on natural and cultural resource issues. It's been my honor, privilege, and pleasure to work with all three of you on various stories over the years, and I'm very grateful for you joining us this evening. And we will be here to take your questions and also talk about this film after its conclusion. But right now, to start us off in a good way, we're going to be gifted with a song. We'll take our seats. Will the singer please come forward?
First of all, introducing myself. My ancestral name is Salmon from the Upper Skagit Indian tribe. And today we're going to do a welcome song from Upper Skagit that's come to me when I was a little boy. So with that, thank you all for being here.
Salmon move out from the river and into town. They avoid places with names like Foster's Freeze, A&W's, Smiley's, but swim close to the track homes on Wright Avenue, where sometimes, in the early morning hours, you can hear them trying doorknobs or bumping against cable TV lines. We wait up for them. We leave our back windows open and call out when we hear a splash. Mornings are a disappointment. Raymond Carver.
Okay, we're going to get started. Linda, if you would please come up. Scott, if you'd please come up. JJ, if you'd please come up. Feel free to move closer if you'd like to. For me, it's very interesting to see this film. I haven't seen it in a very long time. So many of the people that I love in that film are gone now. Bea and Adeline, who I worked with for many years in writing several books about the Elwha. Gosh, Mike McHenry has gray hair now and he's retired. All of us have gone on in different ways since that film was made. So I thought we might start out just by reflecting a little bit about how that film hit, how it struck. I know some of it was very hard for me to watch. JJ, how about you? What hit for you with this film?
First of all, I better express my traditional name is Katzbatsu, and that comes from my grandfather, Claude Wilbur Sr. He was Katzbatsu 5th generation, and Katzbatsu 7th generation. The reason I have to say that it's important in Indian country to say my traditional name because that's typically how we identify each other in families is by our traditional names. So I do want to express that. I think, as Coast Salish people, that could have been a movie about Swinomish right there, literally. The Shaker Church, the river system, the elders, the ladies in there remind me of my grandmothers, my aunties. So, it's just the similarities are striking. And of course, as you know, we all call ourselves people of the salmon. All as tribes, we are people of the salmon, and our life really revolves around, salmon and these salmon fisheries. As a matter of fact, our former chairman, Brian Clattisby, every Wednesday, him and a group of guys cook, they barbecue salmon every Wednesday for our elders. So, salmon's still a very important part of who we are as a people.
My Indian name is Yayatsen, but my English name is Linda Weekman. And I am so proud of my good friend Robert Lundahl making this film and working with both of my great aunts. And they were the ones who encouraged me, when I was younger, I wanted to learn about plants, traditional foods and medicine. And back then, they didn't know. They told me, go on to school, so I did. Went to Lummi Indian School. Besides aquaculture, I did that too, but I was more interested in the plants. I learned traditional foods and medicine, went out to teach. Right now, I'm working with a legacy group, a forest group, who are trying to protect our legacy trees, because the trees are everything. You seen how big those trees were in the film. We don't have that anymore. They're cutting trees down so fast and not replanting, and it's sad. It's sad. I went out to Sadie Creek, and there was some salmon eggs there, and a lot of the logging companies, they'll cut right up to the creek. And like they were talking about, the creek heats up and everything dies. Trees play a very important role in keeping rivers and streams cool. Not only rivers and streams, but life itself that lives in the shade of the trees. I remember going to my elders when I was a teenager to learn about plants. My elders told me to learn as much as I could, so I did. I went to Lummi Indian College to learn about traditional foods and medicine, and then went on from there to teach as a satellite teacher about traditional foods and medicines and the plants and how to weave and gather cedar bark. And I'm really glad I did. I spent 4 years there, and it was exciting working with the other tribes too. When our tribe decided to take down 2 dams on our river, I am glad to witness the destruction and restoration. But when I was asked by my new friends from the Legacy Forest Group to walk with them at Sadie Creek, which is part of our territory in my area, they showed me where there were salmon eggs that was marked by a ribbon in the creek. And I also saw where one of my ancestors had actually pulled cedar bark off the tree, whether it was before the time of treaties or after, I'm not sure, but it's there. I am so grateful to have been invited to be here with y'all, and thank you.
I wonder if you could take a moment, Scott, and talk a little bit about what is the meaning of the Elwha for the Skagit River? What lessons can we take from what was done with the Elwha, the long journey to try to heal it, and the journey we're undertaking now with the Skagit?
Well, first, my hands go up to the Elwha people for their perseverance in making this happen. You know, we have, again, our dams on the Skagit have caused impacts for our tribe and our salmon runs over the years. In fact, the Baker River dams had nearly eliminated our sockeye run. And through our negotiation process for the relicensing, you know, a little over 20 years ago, the agreement that the tribe put in place with Puget Sound Energy, we were able to bring that run back to 90,000 fish, higher than it ever was historically recorded. So it was quite the accomplishment. And you know, currently we're working with the city of Seattle for the relicensing of their dams, and we hope to mitigate it to the fullest extent to bring our salmon back. You know, because in my lifetime, we've seen many of the salmon runs disappear in the Skagit. I've fished the Skagit for roughly 50 years now, and over my lifetime, I've seen the last of many fisheries, the last of the spring Chinook fishery, the last summer-fall fishery, last chum fishery. This is a legacy that we just can't pass on for our kids. So again, we're striving to set the Skagit right and on a good path for the future.
And on the Little River, they were so thick in there, the horse wouldn't go across. You had to walk on them. And they had to back the horse across. They had to back the horse across to get them to go. But you gotta stop to think. All the rivers were that way.
We were told, you know, that the salmon was, you know, belonged to us. It was given to us by our maker. And for us to, you know, get along. And so it's part of our culture. And it's sad that we're, you know, losing the salmon the way it's going, because that was our way of life.
JJ, I wanted to ask you to speak a little bit about hatcheries. This film is pretty tough on hatcheries. There was a lot of footage there where, you know, I found myself kind of wincing and, you know, shutting my eyes even. Could you talk a little bit about hatcheries, their role? Do you yourself have doubts, concerns about hatcheries? Fill us in. What's your perspective?
So hatcheries are, as you know, a big debate, even in Indian country. You know, with those tribes at Swinomish, you know, I like to talk about Etaqua, my aunt, Lorraine Loomis, former fisheries manager. You know, as fishermen, we always promoted more fish, you know, and we wanted hatcheries to be an alternative, many of us, and she would have nothing to do with that. She didn't want to talk hatcheries. It's all about habitat restoration, and for her, it was all habitat restoration or nothing. It was about wild salmon and bringing the wild salmon stocks back in Skagit. You know, for a lot of folks that was frustrating sometimes, as our fishers, they want more time on the water. So for us, the treaty rights go beyond just wild salmon, but salmon period. And if that means, you know, bringing hatchery fish into the picture, there's a lot of us folks that are not totally opposed to it. With that being said, we never want to lose our wild stocks. Our wild stocks are absolutely what's most important in our river system. And you know, we will fight, as you know, as tribes, tooth and nail to make sure that you know, we sustain those wild stocks and they continue to continue to be a part of our river system and our lives, our culture, as we like to say at Swinomish. So the debate will continue. We do support hatchery fish, but we will always fight tooth and nail for the wild salmon and the return of the wild salmon in our river systems.
Hatchery stocks cannot work. The fish have no survival strategies. They're fed in a pond. A commotion is a thing to go to and be fed. A commotion in nature is a thing to run from. From the day that they're liberated, they're totally ill-fitted to get along. And each successive generation of those fish that comes back to the hatchery, they have less survival skills and they have less genetic diversity. The answer to everything in nature is the diversity. The more fish that enter into the pool, the more resistance they have to diseases and whatever may overtake them. We are so deep in this syndrome of hatcheries, and we'll replace any atrocity that you wish to commit on the streams with a hatchery. It's going to be very difficult to get out.
It was really hard to watch the suffering of the Elwha Kings. Very hard to watch, wasn't it? It hurt my heart.
The parasite in the Elwha is a little creature called Dermocystidium, and it affects the gills of adult salmon. The pathologists and the biologists inform me that it is triggered. The little beast can live there and do no harm, but under certain conditions, it starts to grow tremendously. And the irritant in the gills forms a mucus, and the mucus interferes with the gas exchanging abilities of the gill, and the fish simply suffocates.
Linda, I wonder if you could take a moment and speak to us about the interconnection between salmon and forests. I know this is something you've been working hard on and paying attention to. Could you talk about what was going through your mind and your heart when you were looking at some of that footage of those actual, just completely slicked off hillsides and landslides?
Makes me sick. Because it did happen with the state. When they clear-cut a deep creek on the east side of the creek, it did slide into the river, and our salmon, you know, they didn't survive.
This landslide is caused from the clear-cut logging. What originally happened is the stream cut away at the bank below the hill, and then the land started sliding down.
My goal is, you know, how everything walks hand in hand. You know, our tribe had quit fishing the river for 10 years, and then they replanted traditional plants and trees along the river in order to keep that river cool.
It didn't just happen in one event, it just probably gradually sliding down.
And they do this every time before they spawn. We lose all the valuable eggs and the reproduction of those fish. And there is some discussion about it, but it appears to be it's triggered by warm water. This parasite occurs in other watersheds, but it only seems to blossom and cause trouble in watersheds that have dams.
You know, the trees play a really important role. They hold the water, they give water, they communicate, you know, throughout the plant kingdom. And there's so many diversities of animals that rely on the trees that also rely on the fish. It all walks hand in hand. You think about the salmon feed us, humans, and other animals. and then it also feeds the forest. So it's a cycle. So when you destroy one part of it, you're going to have what I call cause and effect.
The river is strangely silent now. Absent are the splashes of spawning fish, cries of bald eagles, the howling of gray wolves. The river seems to be waiting for its waters to be filled again with noisy, vibrant life.
When we're looking at the world today, you're seeing fires and floods and everything else going on, you know? Mother Nature will retaliate and bring back balance if she has to. And that's something that everybody really, really needs to think about, is how we can work in balance with nature and not against nature. That's what I see. And with our future of our tribe, taking down those 2 dams is just the beginning. And I want to see everything come back into balance once more.
Thank you. I wanted to ask you, JJ and Scott and Linda, if each of you could take a moment and reflect with us. It is Indigenous Peoples Day. If you could talk a bit about how we could change our way of thinking and being on the land and on the water to unconquer this last frontier. And what can we learn from you, and how can we change the way we are in relation to the land and the water that would help Mother Nature not have to scrape us off and get rid of us? Let's start with you, Scott. What can we learn?
Well, thanks, Linda. You know, I think one of the things that we teach our children from Skagit is always leave things better than when we found it. You know, we think in terms of the generational aspect of things, and we always strive to restore, preserve, protect, whether it's wildlife, salmon, and leave a better future for all of us, not just tribal folks, but for everybody. You know, I spoke with Linda the other day, and from our perspective, it's a quality of life issue. You know, we all live better lives when our water is clean, when we have salmon, when we have wildlife, and we're just better people for it, and that should always be, we should always strive for that.
That's a difficult question, Linda. Good one. You know, with colonization, you know, and the impact it's made on our Indigenous communities and really our way of life, Scott explained it well. Another thing we were taught is never to take more than what we need, right? I mean, that's what we're taught in our communities. Never take more than what we need. Respect your elders. Never take more than what you need. Sit down, shut up, and listen. You know, to listen to your elders and learn. You know, until you come of age to where you can have a voice. When colonization happened so many years ago here in in our neck of the woods, capitalism just became a way of life, and really, you know, the old term, what was it? Kill the Indian, save the man. You know, we all of our families were impacted. All my great-grandparents, my grandparents all attended the Indian boarding schools, you know, that we talk so much about. You know, Catholicism, capitalism, you know, it really wove a fabric in our communities during that time.
Progress was a word bandied about often, and people meant it. It was something that everyone talked about. When they talked about progress, the connotation had to do with advancing toward a degree of perfection, making the state of nature better. It meant that science could maybe even give people both fish and power. Heck, we can get juice from this river and we can increase a fishery. Perfect solution. think that word had severe implications for what has happened over the past 80 years.
It created a lot of heartache. You know, it goes against all the moral values of everything that we're taught in our tribal communities. So, you know, we struggle.
The stock that my mother had, they were murdering the dogs or poisoning the animals. They didn't have no respect. We were just Indians, and that was the treatment we got.
See, and those ginks didn't know, but they went and did that. Actually, their title to that property isn't good.
And what is this place now?
It's state-owned, I guess. Isn't it State Hatchery? Isn't that what you said, B? State Hatchery.
Their conception of progress then was keen, and there was so much around them, so much bounty around them, that it was easy to have that kind of belief, a belief that we could tinker with nature, that we could impound a river that was working just fine for a few thousand years, and then we could artificially spawn the river's salmon and improve it. And yet 60, 70 years later, there's nothing in that river that would contribute towards subsistence lifestyle. Whereas before science improved the river, you had an entire community surviving depressions and recessions and eating foodstuffs from that river for decades with no problems at all. And now we have an entire community that realizes what we did to the river, we might have to undo.
You know, with our cultures, you know, for the last 20 years, 20, 30 years, we've been able to start revitalizing our cultures, our language. You know, who we are as a people has become more and more of an identity these days than it was many years ago. And the Indian is coming back. And we're comfortable in that skin. We don't have to go out of our reservation and not practice our ways or be who we want to be. We can do that today and do it loud and proud. So, you know, with all the teachings and the values that we learned from our great-grandparents, our grandparents, and our aunties, you know, I think the biggest thing we can say today is we're very prideful of who we are and where we come from. We don't have to be ashamed anymore of who we are, which was how we felt, you know, generations of our folks felt for many years. So today we're proud to be Indigenous people. We go to knock on the doors at you know, Washington D.C. and talk with you know, our state and federal elected leaders and advocate for the things that we want to see. We go down to Olympia, in the halls of Olympia, and advocate for you know, Indigenous people and Indigenous communities, our way of life down there today. And you know, there's a whole army of us today that do that. So great question. I think you know, today is one of those days where we just, you know, be who you are. You know, never take more than what you need, and absolutely leave it better than what you showed up.
You wiped out the food chain because no insects are in the gravel. You need gravel for insects, and insects are the bottom of the food chain. You wipe that out, you wipe out everything else. What I'm getting at is that the liability issue, the Lower Clallam tribe has had a lot taken from them. And if you start adding it up over the years, they have the grounds for one of the best suits, and no judge is going to turn down any kind of award to them. That river supported salmon for thousands of years, and they didn't have any problems with it until the turn of the century when Thomas Aldwell built that dam on it.
When it comes to nature, a lot of us have forgotten how to respect her. When we go out into the forest, there are spirits. There's spirits everywhere. We say the plant people, the rock people, the tree people. And a lot of times when people go out in the forest, they forget to ask permission to walk out there, because you're going into the forest where the spirits live. You know, we got the little people out there. When humanity decides to give honor and respect to every living thing, then we can work in harmony. And that's just how I believe it. And talk to some of the Native people. If you got questions, ask them. Some of them know. Some may not, because they're not grounded, you know, in a sense. So, you know, everything's about business these days. But times are changing. We have to change in order to make things beautiful once more and to work in harmony together as a one people. Because we're not separated. This land, it belongs to all of us. So remember, we are here to work together with nature, not against nature, if you want to survive on this planet. That's how I see it.
Thank you so much for those beautiful statements. And Linda, picking up on your point, this resistance to erasure. I'll say that again, this resistance to erasure that your people have managed incredibly through everything that's happened, generation after generation after generation. Your powerful statement, we are still here. JJ Swinomish, we are still here. Scott, Upper Skagit, we are still here. You often hear these performative land acknowledgement statements. In our household, we've been wanting to change up that narrative and instead ask for history acknowledgements, where we as neighbors gather as we are here tonight, side by side, face to face, heart to heart, recognizing that this earth that we share, this land that we share, these waters we share, need all of our hearts and all of our minds, as you just so beautifully stated, standing together.
We as humans were brought here to work with nature, not destroy it. Not for personal gain.
There is a wealth of information that was collected during the FERC process. The draft EIS that FERC put out in February 1991 basically answered all the questions with regard to what was needed for fish passage at the dams. Even if you do that, you will only end up with 12% of the total numbers of fish that you would have if the dams are removed. So basically what it comes down to is, this is not a technical issue. It hasn't been since 1991. What this is a personal choice. Either you value the reservoirs, you value the dams and the amenities that they provide, and you're willing to do with far less fish, or you want more fish and you want a restored ecosystem and you want guaranteed jobs. That's not for the Park Service to dictate. That's for you to decide.
It was becoming accepted by the scientific community that the river should be allowed to run its course, with the resulting downstream impacts mitigated.
We struggle sometimes communicating, the tribes do. I know Upper Skagit does, because we've been so reclusive over the years. We've tried to keep our culture to ourselves and not communicate, with our surrounding community. But now we're getting more involved, dealing with the current relicensing. One of the lessons that we learned is we have to effectively communicate our history, our culture, so people can understand, why we say the things we do, and why are we taking these actions, and just bridge that gap of understanding with our local surrounding communities, and work together where we can. Linda has a great message. We just have to continually strive to work together collectively to bring these salmon back, to restore our rivers, our ecosystem. We only have one environment, and we can't lose it.
Our tribe took down 2 dams, and by doing so also planted natural plants and trees, restoring nature. The salmon people, as we call it, fish, feed the animals, the whales, and even the land with nutrients. As well as humans, it works hand in hand with balance, as we all should. I'm forever grateful to Robert for making the film on Conquering the Last Frontier, and many others, my elders also, who made it possible. Humanity will gain more when working with nature than change in nature. It does not work that way, cause and effect. It's time to reconnect and stop climate change and bring balance once more. And so it is.